The DCU was supposed to be the grand reset, a fresh, ambitious rebirth for Detective Comics and Warner Brothers after a decade of chaos, misfires, and troubled projects. The keys to the kingdom were handed to James Gunn, the mastermind who turned C-list misfits into global icons. The announcement broke the internet. The first time in years, DC fans felt a spark of genuine hope, and for a moment, it looked like Gunn had actually cracked the code. Peacemaker and the Suicide Squad were breakout hits. Commandos landed with critics, and Superman promised to bring optimism back to the big screen. But somewhere along the way, something shifted. The hype softened, doubts grew louder, and suddenly the entire DCU found itself on a razor's edge, caught between revival and collapse. How did we get here? What does the future look like? And what happens if Warner Brothers really does sell the whole studio? Let's break it all down. And before we begin, hit subscribe on Silver Screen Hero if you want more Marvel and DC deep dives. Unlike most stories, this one begins with a collapse. By late 2022, the original DCEU, born with Zack Snyder's Man of Steel, had lost almost all momentum. Marvel was still dominating, DC was drifting, and honestly, they didn't have a choice anymore. Fans were frustrated, critics didn't believe in the direction, and Warner Brothers was desperate to hit the reset button. They needed someone who could rebuild the brand from scratch, someone who could unify the tone, refocus the storytelling, and finally deliver the shared universe DC had been chasing for over a decade. Enter the supposed savior, James Gunn, a director who turned a talking raccoon, a sentient tree, and a socially awkward earthling into global icons at Marvel. A director who, despite the DCEU sinking, delivered The Suicide Squad, one of DC's most critically praised films in years. And when he followed that with a hit like Peacemaker, he felt like the one person who could steer the ship. So when Warner Brothers announced James Gunn and Peter Safran as co-CEOs of the brand new DC studios, it felt like the smartest move they had made in a long time. And just like that, the DCU was officially born. Not from a movie, not from a comic, but from a promise, a hope that James Gunn could do for DC what he did for the Guardians, turn misfits into icons, rebuild from ashes, and finally make DC competitive again. At first, it looked like he was doing exactly that. Fans were excited, the critics were cautiously optimistic, and for the first time in a while, people were genuinely talking about DC's future. Didn't have to convince me, LOL. My first Gunn film was TSS back in 2021. My brother and I watched it on HBO Max with very little expectations. Those first 10 mins had us laughing, shocked, sad, and overall caught our attention to stay watching. Things I cannot say about any of the DCEU projects. Hashtag let him cook. Then came the announcement of Chapter 1, Gods and Monsters, Commandos, a new Superman, a new Batman, a new Supergirl, a Green Lantern series, Clayface, and more. A mix of expected heavy hitters and obscure deep cuts that showed Gunn wasn't afraid to dig deep into DC's stranger corners. The stage was set, cameras were rolling, and the world waited for the rise of a brand new DC universe. But as the chapters unfolded, the rise became a lot more complicated. Instead of opening with Superman, Gunn made an unusual choice. The DCU would begin with a show, and an animated one at that, Commandos. On paper, this sounded risky. Launch a universe with obscure characters? Supernatural misfits? This didn't scream cinematic universe tentpole. It screamed Gunn being Gunn. But when it premiered, it worked. Critics praised the tone, the writing, and the confidence. It felt like Gunn knew exactly what he wanted the DCU to be. Funny, emotional, character-driven, and full of heart. And surprisingly, viewers showed up. Not Marvel-sized numbers, but strong enough to inspire confidence. More importantly, it revealed Gunn's strategy. Start small, build trust, introduce new characters first, instead of immediately leaning on legends. A bit lacking compared to other Gunn projects, but solid. Has good action, humor, music, and heart. Just how Gunn likes it. Chasing squirrels hit me right in the feels. The DCU had its first win, but that win came with a hidden problem. People didn't have expectations for Commandos. The bar was low, the characters were unknown, the pressure was non-existent. Superman was the opposite, and that's where the rise began to turn. Superman wasn't just another film on the slate. It was the foundation, the centerpiece, the movie everything else would orbit around. And Gunn directing it himself meant he was putting his reputation on the line. After years of hashtag restore the Snyderverse and bring back Henry Cavill chants, expectations were brutal. Fans adored Cavill. Snyder's Superman had a loyal, vocal fan base. Rebooting him again was a risk. But Gunn made it clear his Superman would be different, more comic accurate, more hopeful, more classic. The trailer dropped, reactions were mixed, but hopeful. When the film finally hit theaters, critics called it good, not groundbreaking, not era-defining, but good, colorful, optimistic, earnest. I liked it. Man of Steel worked better for me as a movie and story, but I also liked this one too because it's more comic booky. The casting and music were awesome, but also way too busy. Then the numbers came in, $616.7 million worldwide. Respectable, but not enough, especially when Man of Steel made $670.1 million back in 2013, despite being far more divisive. This raised a terrifying question. If Superman can't break out, what can? Superman didn't fail, but he didn't save the universe either, and the next project didn't help. Peacemaker Season 1 was one of the best things the late DCEU produced. Sharp, emotional, bold. So when Season 2 was announced as a DCU project, expectations were massive. And at first, it delivered. Great humor, strong emotional moments, excellent character work. But then came the finale. It became one of the most divisive endings in recent DC history. Fans said it felt rushed, underdeveloped, a little disconnected from the rest of the season. Instead of a triumphant statement of Gunn's consistency, it sparked doubts about focus and direction. Yeah, I don't have any fundamental problems with the episode in a vacuum, but it felt more like a season finale rather than the last episode of the show. It wasn't a disaster, it was simply disappointing. And disappointment is dangerous when a universe is already fighting uphill. Peacemaker's mixed reception shifted everyone's attention to DCU's future slate. Clayface, Supergirl, Lanterns. Ambitious? Yes. Blockbuster-proof? Not exactly. Supergirl is beloved, but historically, her solo projects underperform. Clayface is intriguing, but niche. Lanterns has insane potential, but the 2011 film still haunts the character. Fans started asking, is Gunn building what the audience wants, or just what he wants? The fear wasn't that these projects would be bad. The fear was that they wouldn't be big enough to sustain a cinematic universe. And then came the rumors. Warner Brothers has been dealing with stock volatility, leadership shakeups, and financial pressure. Behind closed doors, industry giants, Amazon, Apple, Universal, Netflix are watching, discussing, considering acquisitions. If one ever goes through, the DCU could end overnight. That's the story so far. A rise filled with hope and a fall filled with complications. So, now it's your turn. What do you think about James Gunn's DCU? Are the projects good, great, adequate, disappointing? Will the DCU survive the next decade or the next merger? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and while you're there, hit like and subscribe for more breakdowns here on Silver Screen Hero.